Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the AfricaMusicLaw.com show. This is episode number 151 for those keeping count. If you're just joining us for the first time, my name is Uduak Oduak. I go by Miss Uduak for short. I'm a fashion and entertainment lawyer located in California, USA, with the law firm of Fashion ENT Law. And this particular show is a show that is all about empowering the African artist. It was established in 2011. The podcast itself, what you're watching now, 2014. And then the live streams just last year, mid-August, during COVID lockdown, to ensure that everybody gets a chance to see us. And it's been good. You all like it. When I say you all, your longtime listeners love the live stream element to it, so we continue to do it. I'm excited about our guest for today. Before I move on, however, let me tell you again, for new viewers and of course listeners who are going to listen to the podcast version, don't forget to subscribe. And you can subscribe so many ways. Go to africamusiclaw.com to do so. Or in the alternative, if you're just about listening to the podcast, you can find us on all major podcasting platforms. If you want to watch this, it's an immediate replay on YouTube. And of course, you can also see the immediate replay on Facebook, on my fan page, Miss Uduak fan page, and also the brand's fan page, Africa Music Law. You can also find us on all major social network platforms at Africa Music Law. My guest today is someone I've been looking forward to interviewing. I've actually featured and talked about her for so long over the course of covering all things relating to Africa's fashion and entertainment industry. And in the course of doing that, I've gotten to know her for over a decade. But I'm particularly glad that we have first met in terms of seeing each other for the first time just backstage before me coming on stage. So let me introduce my guest for today. Her name is Emem Ema, and Emem Ema is an artist turned lawyer and now music manager and business owner. She's also the founder and CEO of One Management, a talent and creative management agency in Nigeria, managing creatives in music, film, television, theater, sports, and tech. One Management, since its inception, has worked with over 60 clients from diverse industries, held and supported over 150 events worldwide, including tours, roadshows, and corporate events, and currently manages 6 talents. Emem has shadowed international artist managers, including likes of Benny Medina, who managed Mariah Carey, Jennifer Lopez, and Diddy, among so many others, Ari Emmanuel, Kevin Liles, Guy Oseary, who managed Madonna and U2, and Chris Morisson with Blur and Gorillaz, or managing Blur and Gorillaz. So she has a bachelor's and LLB degree from Nigerian Law School and the University of Lagos. And she's also been a consultant to the British Council in London, Kenya, South Africa, and Ghana. Everyone, please help me welcome my guest, Emem Ema. Emem, welcome, welcome, welcome. How are you? Oh my gosh, we're not hearing you. Can you unmute yourself? Emem? Okay, all right. For whatever reason, we're not hearing Emem. Let's try pretty soon again. Emem, can we hear you? For whatever reason, you are muted. Is there a way to unmute
Hi, Miss
yourself?
You. How's it going?
There we go. There we go. You unmuted
Hello,
yourself.
everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we
I
can hear
hope
you very
the
well
internet
now.
connection is
That's okay. That's
good.
okay. Welcome,
Good to
welcome,
see you
welcome.
after so many years. Forgive me,
Yes.
I'm at the airport about to catch a flight because our flight's been moved twice. So please just pardon me if you hear any announcements or if I have to jump off. But I'm so excited to be here.
Yes,
Thanks
you
for having me.
mentioned the unfortunate situation in the Nigerian airport systems and how you've been delayed at the airport having to deal with this. And I know you just informed me not too long ago about it. That's okay. We'll work around it. And actually, as part of working around it, one of the things I want to talk to you about, just in case you end up leaving us, is the whole big celebration of Davido at 10 years. And for our audience watching this, if for whatever reason Emem has to leave us early, then I definitely would want some of you to come on and let's continue with the conversation with me and help me co-host as we talk about that as well. So Emem, let's start first there. You've seen the major celebration of a young talent that came in and now he's at the 10th year. What are your thoughts?
I think it's absolutely amazing. It's good to see such consistency over the years. When you look at the history of Afrobeat and how it emerged as like the urban Nigerian music scene, and you can point to like three generations by now, it's very laudable that someone like David can boast of being in the industry for 10 years. I mean, it goes without saying when you see the likes of Mr. P, who's been in the industry for almost a quarter of a century, or the likes of Two Face, and how
Yeah.
their consistency and relevance has been, even till date. It's very, very exciting to actually see people like David and Wiz and all celebrate 10 years. It's phenomenal. It's a great thing. And I think it shows that, there's a lot of wherewithal in the Afrobeat scene. So
Yeah, and
congratulations to him, and we hope to see many more of, such celebrations coming up.
absolutely. And I think his impact in the industry, it's funny you mentioned Two Face, because one of the things that came to mind as you were speaking was Two Face and P Square and Mr. P, in terms of the expanded history that they've had. And I remember them celebrating, particularly Two Face, his own anniversary. And here you are with a new baton being passed on to the likes of Davido, celebrating 10 years. And the impact on a global level has been simply phenomenal. Hopefully, we can unpack a lot more of that conversation later on if you happen to stay with us much longer. But in the meantime, I
I'm
wanted
here for as long as you have me.
awesome. In the meantime, I wanted that direct one on one with you to talk about your background in the business. So let's start first for those who may not really be as familiar as a lot of industry insiders are with you. Why don't you share your background with us? Tell us more about yourself and how you got into artist management.
Okay. So my first foray into artist management or talent management came as a result of my actual experience in the business as an artist. And we started at a time that the music industry was going through a shift. We'd had like the old guard where you had, the record labels from Polygram, Sony, and all of those people there. You had the likes of, Shina Peters and all. Christy Okoye, Daddy Shoki, and the likes just coming out. So for us, it was kind of like it was new school. It was a new generation. It was, more enlightened people, more educated people who were going into the business of music. And you had that a lot of us were actually on the talent side and not necessarily on the structure side. So once our stint or we're transitioning from, Kush into other businesses, I looked at it and I said, listen, there's this is a gold mine. People are beginning to embrace music or film and TV in phenomenal ways, but something has to be done. We can't all be actors, we can't all be producers. There's got to be another way to actually build this ecosystem. And you looked at it and we said, okay, fine, there's something in talent representation. It kind of gives you a holistic view and feel of the entire, industry. So whether it's music, film, TV, you have a little bit of an understanding. Not forgetting my background as a lawyer. So for me, it was
Mm.
more about how we could develop the industry and contribute to its growth without focusing on just one aspect of the business. And talent representation was the only way that I could actually see this happening. So we got into representation, me and a couple of friends of ours who had the same vision, the same passion to see, actually see the industry grow. We started with a group of four guys, and here we are today. We've worked with naming in the industry, not necessarily representing them, whether it's consulting for them, whether it's kind of working on development with them, or booking them for other platforms, whether if it's shows and the likes. We do all of that, and it's been quite a journey. 15 years on, we're here.
Wow, very, very interesting. So let's unpack that just a little bit on the specifically the transition of musician to artist management. Did you already have your law degree prior to that, before becoming a musician?
Um, I was actually pursuing. I just finished whilst we were working on the Kush album. I was just wrapping on my degree, my law degree, and getting into law school. So by the time Kush was in full swing, I had just finished law school, and doing the shows, going up and down the world, performing, and all of that. By the time Kush was rapping, I had that experience as an artist, not only as an artist, but also because we had a great manager. And I thought, okay, this is something that was new. No one's really doing it. There was nothing like management or representation then. So I saw an opportunity and I thought, this might just be it. Stay in the business side of showbiz and still make things happen. Yeah. So I was multitasking as a student, artist, and all. Yeah.
Okay, and if you're just joining us, as I see some of the numbers going up on the viewers, our guest unfortunately has to deal with challenges of travels. She should have been back already at her place. Unfortunately, she's stuck at the airport with several delays of her travel. So she is talking to us as she speaks at the airport. So if you hear the, sound from the announcer, just be aware that that's what's going on. But we will keep the show rolling, and we appreciate her time and effort to still make this happen. Thank you so much. In addition, for all of our viewers, please feel free to leave your comments, and certainly we'll bring that into the stream. And then finally, as I did say, we have a trendy topic that we're talking about, which is Davido at 10 years old. And specifically, I'm going to extrapolate from all the legal cases I've covered of Davido. So if our guests do leave, I will be pulling a few of you to show up and be a co-host with me as we talk about Davido. So stay tuned and keep watching. So having said that, let's go back to you, Emem, and you were explaining sort of your transition with respect to, musician and then becoming a lawyer and ultimately an artist manager. So what I want to do with us is look at the entire artist manager value chain and start to talk about some of your concerns and some of your feelings of, yes, we're in a good place. So let's start at the very entrance of that artist management value chain. And then, of course, we'll interweave some of your experiences with your clients, past or present clients, without naming names. And I hope to end the conversation with the highlight of how you've been able to strategically position and rebrand, particularly Mr. P, in light of the major fallout of a legacy band, P Square. So starting off with that initial artist value chain, the first time an artist contacts a manager and says, I would like representation, one of the things we've seen in the industry are the lack of structure you've talked about and a lot of discrepancies in how artist management is still being done. So can you first address your concerns on that particular initial value chain? And then we'll talk about some of the things you think are being done right.
I'll tell you what, first and foremost, I think the major challenge for me as talent representation is the fact that people don't even understand what is meant by representation, whether it's the talent themselves, whether it's an agency trying to engage a talent, and even other people who call themselves talent managers, they do not understand what talent representation is all about. And that's the first thing to deal with, having an understanding of what it is, which is who is a manager. People have, over here, kind of mix up the difference between a manager, a personal assistant, an agent, a lawyer, and even an agent. So I've found myself constantly having to educate people on what a manager or who a manager is. Your manager is your career guide. They kind of put the blueprint together and sit with you as a talent. What are your expectations? That's the first thing I would ask, any talent who comes to us or any talent that, we have set our eyes on. What are your expectations? What do you expect to get from this career? And then we help you build all of that. We would also tell you what our own ideas are and how we can get you from level A to level B and C and D, and how long it will take, what needs to be, the amount of work that needs to be put into it. So you are developing the talent as well as, exposing or promoting the talent and ensuring that the talent stays true to their essence, either as a creative or as a business or as a brand. That's basically what we do in a nutshell. Having to educate people on who a manager is, the importance of a manager, and what the opportunities and the benefits that you can get from having proper representation. It's not just picking your cousin up from the streets and they're booking shows and you say that's my manager. There's certain things that you need to know and educate yourself, even as someone who represents talent. I would never allow my talent do certain things or be seen in a particular light. Why? Because that is not what they stand for, or that's not what the brand is about. I wouldn't want to kind of like denigrate what my client's essence is. If I know the potential that my client has, I have to ensure that they fulfill or get to the fullest potential in the best ways necessary with best practices. And if I think that this is a talent that has global appeal, we work towards ensuring that that is what happens. I don't know if that answers your question.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Covers a lot too, which I want to dive more into. So there are two key things that stand out with what you've said, one of which is understanding the definition of what artist management really means. And then also, in addition, not being per se educated enough on even doing the work, right? And so you do have a lot of talents getting in, and this is sort of their first time in a very formal structure where an artist manager will even think to have the question of what are your expectations. That's not a typical question that you would even see in the artist management setting on the ground over there. That's not a common dialogue per se. So in educating the artist who is completely like blank stare, what do you mean, what are my expectations? When they're coming to you, how do you suggest, especially for artist managers that have no clue and are still trying to pick this thing up and figure it out, they try to enlighten the artist, and the artist, him or herself, becomes aware of, okay, well, you should have expectations and this is what it should be?
Absolutely. I mean, if I was to get into a car, I know that I'm trying to get from, like right now, Abuja to Lagos. And there are several ways that I can get from Abuja to Lagos. All I know is that I'm trying to get to Lagos to Abuja. I can either go by air, I can go by road, I could go by donkey, I could go by camel. But you would need someone to tell you, or someone would have to tell you, well, the quickest way to get to Lagos from Abuja is to hop on a plane. It's a 45-minute plane ride or flight. If I were going to go by road, it's an 8-hour trip. So what management would expect is, as an artist, even if you're a greenhorn, forgive me for the background noise.
That's okay.
You
We've
need
already
to know
explained
what
to
you
the
want
audience
first.
And so for our audience that's listening, and I think Emem has muted herself for right now. And let me just explain what's going on so that you all understand. I'll bring Emem right back. So if you're just joining us, Emem was already supposed to be in Lagos much, much, much earlier. Unfortunately, her flight from Abuja to Lagos has been delayed several times now. So she's sitting at the airport and she wants to still make sure she shows up for this particular pre-scheduled interview. So she's asking that you please forgive as we hear the announcers coming intermittently to explain about, whatever the announcements and travel flights are. But we will continue our conversation because I think we can continue it. So Emem, you were talking about, basically the role of the artist manager to be a guide to help the artist gets to the final destination. And the question is, by what means do you want to get there? But in order to figure that out, the artist needs to be able to answer by what means. It's essentially what you were saying before we got that announcer coming in, correct? Don't forget to unmute.
That's what I was saying. So yes, the artist knows I'm trying to get to a particular destination, but probably doesn't know how. And you would think, oh yeah, if I'm a talent, I just need to have a hot song. What is a hot song? You have to start from. So your management is involved from jump. Is either picking the right material, helping you out with what your image should be, target audience, where we find these people, who are the people that have access to these people. Is it Do I go through radio? Do I do underground? Should I do grassroots? Should we do word of mouth? How should we put an artist's name or image in people's minds? How would you resonate with your audience? Who is your audience? Where can I find your audience? Who are the people to talk to reach this audience? And how do I make sure that you stand out? Because now talent, they're a dime a dozen, so you have to be very innovative or creative in reaching an audience. How do we do these things? What kind of team do I need behind me? Do I even need management right now? So there's several caters to it. We don't use a one size fits all prototype, or we don't use a one size fits all guide for everybody else. Talents differ. I wouldn't use what the plan is or the blueprint for Mr. P for a newbie or a greenhorn. There are different ways to it, and management is also a bit of a psychological thing as well. So you have to be sure that whoever you're engaging and who you're working with, is mentally prepared and ready, because fame is a drug, fame is a demon. Depends on how you're able to rein it in. So if you're only in it because of fame, then your intentions might not particularly be you know right or skewered right. And there's nothing wrong with wanting fame, but can you handle it? And are you willing to put in the work? And if you're trying to get a message out there through your music or through your art, that's another thing. So there are different ways to it, and we find a couple of different individuals that come in through our doors, coming for different reasons. Oh, I want to be the next big thing after Whiskey. Oh, I want to do. I just want to be popular. I want my people in the village to see me on TV. So people come with different reasons of why they want to do this thing, and we have to sit through it and see if this is talent that we can work with, or advise them accordingly, or say maybe you don't have the talent for it. Maybe you should be a bit more patient. Maybe it's going to take you 2 years to get there. Maybe it'll take you 2 weeks. Maybe it'll take you 2 minutes. It depends. So it's there's a whole process to it. There isn't a one size fits all
Okay.
answer or guide.
Yeah, of course. Before we move to the next aspect of that artist manager value chain that I want to cover, let me throw in, as part of the first question you were answering, the issue of the cultural differences or cultural norms that affect the artist manager relationship. I'm particularly interested, and I'd like you to speak a little bit about it. I think the way you've positioned your brand and your business is different. But what I do know, and what I've observed over 14 years of overall covering the industry and receiving a lot of content from artist managers on behalf of their clients, and of course, some of the news stories out there as well, is there is a blurred line, if you will, with the relationship, the artist and the manager, where there's a lack of respect that comes into play. There's a lack of that understanding of the role, and then cultural norms of class, if you will. Once the artist
Uduak, I've
stat,
lost sound. I can't hear you. So if you can hear me, please help
I can hear you.
me out with
I can
that.
hear.
I couldn't hear.
I can hear you very, very well. All right. So let me try that again. In the meantime, let's see if we have any comments going. Okay. Can you hear me, Emem? Okay. We'll remove Emem and we'll go ahead and talk about the topic that I said we would. But before I do that, the question I was going was the issue of artist management and their relationships and how it causes a conflict, specifically relating to sort of the house boy, house girl mentality and how that plays into the situation, and it gets all crazy. I'm looking here on the backstage, so if I see movement from Emem, I'll bring her right back in. But her connection seems to be a problem. Having said that, one of the things I said we would talk about, and initially we started to talk about, is the Davido at 10. And one of the things I want to do in talking about Davido at 10, and I'd love for you guys to leave your comments, and certainly feel free to come and join me as I continue to talk about Davido at 10, is, interestingly, I was looking at all of the cases I've covered of Davido at 10, and everyone is covering it from a standpoint of, obviously, he's accomplished a lot, and I think it's been beautiful to see that. But I want to cover it from a legal standpoint on some of the legal stories I've covered of Davido, and then the expansion of his brand, the licensing, the trademarks, getting into certain JV, joint venture deals, among other things. And if you would like to join me as a co-host on the show today, simply leave a comment and I'll send you a link so you can join me and we can co-host and talk about Davido at 10. So while we still wait to see what's going on with Emem, she's lost sound on the back end and her screen is black. So you can't see her. I can't see her. But when she comes back on, we'll bring her on. And it seems like she's been able to figure that out. But one of the first things I remember writing, December 23rd, 2011, on the African Music Club platform. I was covering Davido way before that on my other platform, Lady Brill. And one of the first things that I remember writing is 22 hot Nigerian artists and songs that rocked 2011. That was when I launched the African Music Club platform. And Davido was one of the listed ones. And one of the songs I really loved was, at the time, Sauce Kid was going with the name Sauce Kid. So it was Davido and Sauce Kid with still one of my favorite sounds, Carolina. That song was absolutely hot. It was amazing. And I love that Sinzu and Davido could figure it out together. So there's so much more we'll talk. And of course, all the legal shenanigans, the crazy, the good and bad with Davido. I'll still keep talking about it. Again, if you want to join me as a co-host for this particular segment, please feel free to leave in the comment section and I'll invite you and you'll get on the stream too and be a part of the broadcast. All right, Emem is here. We'll put her through. Emem, how are you? Welcome back. We'll keep this going.
Hello.
So if you do cut off, that's fine. You've already told us what the background is. I'm not concerned about that. And we're going to continue and keep it rolling. Not a problem. So I was talking about the challenges and situations with the nuances of the cultural norms that affect the lack of respect, lack of demarcation line, and from the managers themselves and from the artists, where physical abuse, mental abuse,
and also being
all
female.
kinds of stuff. Yes, and the female part too, right? Comes into play as well. In fact, it's so funny you said that. I remember the case study, I even wrote about it. I think it was Osage, one of the managers, with, I think it was Baseline Records and with Scales, and that whole drama that happened and the physical aspect of alleged imprisonment, among other things. But let's just talk about that relationship generally, where artists do not seem to understand the respect line for managers, and managers themselves sometimes don't respect themselves. And then you throw the cultural aspect to it in a society like Nigeria, for example, and it's like a mess. So can you address that? I'm very curious about your perspective on that.
I mean, in terms of I'll start from the easy one and then move down. In terms of gender-related issues, I think people are beginning to come to terms with the fact that there has to be some form of gender equality when it comes to the business. Culturally, females are supposed to be quieter, be in the background, don't be too assertive, don't be too aggressive, which is, sometimes a challenge when you have to negotiate or put your foot down. And then now look at a point where you are a female representing a male talent, people kind of get it twisted, and you have to find that you find yourself having to be extremely assertive, and then people come up say, oh, she's difficult, but you're not being difficult. I'm not asking you for anything that a male colleague wouldn't ask the same for his talent or for our own party, and then not have it done without anyone blinking an eye. But for you as a female, not only are you working 3 or 10 times as hard, but you have to even be harder in terms of making your voice heard and being seen. So I think in our own, for me, it would be the issue of experience and the fact that, okay, people know, or to an extent know my journey in the business. But, we're doing this for those that are coming after us and ensuring that there aren't things like sexual harassment or, overlooked and ignored just because of your gender. That's on the one end. Secondly, if, like I had said, if people really understood what representation was all about, you wouldn't get offended or get, your underwears in a bunch because a manager is speaking to you. There are a lot of people, even people in the business, who want to talk to the talent directly. I've had a lot of times where my clients have had to say, please, if you don't speak to my management, there's really not much I can do. And it's not being insulting. Yeah, it's just them saying, I just focus on the creative aspect. I have a team who handles the business, who handles my itinerary, who would be in the best position to tell you how to go about getting me to do this. And it's not them being insulting or rude. It's just being professional. And so if people don't understand what a manager's function is, it's easy to abuse that office or abuse the person in that office. And I think with the way development has been going on, you know, in the industry, people are beginning to understand it, but you have to constantly educate people on the importance of having representation. uh, Whether it's people getting signing contracts that they shouldn't, or people being double booked, or being misrepresented in a way that is not true to the talent's image or their rights, or and so there's so much that representation does. It's not just booking shows, like I said. It's not just having, a Rolodex of every other artist that is out there. There's actual work that goes into it. There's actually strategy. There's actually a thought process through it all. So yes, you see an artist on stage and in the right places, or booking the right shows, or PR, and doing the right things. There's a whole team of people behind them, and right in the middle of all of that is representation, is the manager ensuring that all of these elements, all of these pieces come together for you as the audience to enjoy what you see from your fave. And I think if people begin to understand that, it makes more sense. I don't understand managers who hop on club tables when your artist is there, and everybody's phone is out there and people are just doing the most. Even when we're out, you still be professional.
You're
You
still
act as a
professional.
cover for your talent. You have to be. You know.
Absolutely.
So I don't know.
Yeah, and I would even
That's. I'm
say
trying to put everything in
that
a nutshell.
no, you're
Depending
good.
when the next
We're
announcement
taking
comes in.
our time. We're teasing it out because I mean, the very tagline of the show is empowering the African artist. So I do want artists to be empowered, and
Yeah.
the professionals, the managers that are watching this, present and future, want to be managers. That's actually one of the biggest questions I get since I started African music law. Wanting to be an artist manager
Yeah.
or referral to an artist manager. It's still the number one request I get a lot till today.
Oh
And frankly
wow.
speaking, for the most part, I've not really known which artist managers to send them to, because there are a limited a few that are already capped out on the amount of artists they can
Oh
take
yeah.
on. So it's sort of like,
Oh
okay, where do
yeah.
I send you? And usually I just send them to the resource online to check things out, or artist manager
Yeah.
organizations that are functional, which are very far and few
Yeah.
between. So that's a very good discussion. We're going to tease it out. So there's something that came up before we go to the next level of the value chain I want to cover, which is the sidestepping. It sort of ties to the next value chain discussion. Sidestepping the artist. There've been so many stories. I've written so many of them where the artist is contracted to the manager. There's a contract in place, but that gender issue you talk about, and I actually see it also. I get a lot of reports from female lawyers that tell me this, right? So it also happens in the manager side too, men and women actually, which is the company or whoever the third party is will literally sidestep the manager and go to the artist. And for the most part, the artist, because they don't respect that relationship, the contractual relationship, will sometimes directly, breach that contract by directly interacting with that third party and negotiating whatever that deal is on their own. So I know you've probably experienced every now and then a few of those instances. How have you dealt with it, and how do you suggest the industry as a whole deal with that particular situation?
I always say respect. If there isn't respect between both parties, it's very easy to abuse that relationship. So the first form of respect is trust. The second form
Hmm.
of respect is having a watertight contract. And all we always have contract with all of our talents. Even if we have a handshake, even if it's we're cool with each other and all, but it's also to have the contract so we know what our obligations to each other are. And the minute you decide that you really don't want to follow the contract, one party has to bring the sheep back into the fold. And there are several ways that you can make people respect what they've put their name on, what they put pen to paper on. And for us, we let the courts decide. If it comes to it, we can have a friendly conversation. But if it looks like that's not making headway, then we let the courts decide, or we, chase alternative ways of ensuring that we both see reason. Or
Alternative
just
ways, so
basically
long
say,
as you're
you know
not
what, we
calling
can
our
no
area
longer work
boys.
together and let's all go our separate ways. So if you owe me, pay me. If I owe you, I pay you. There's no wahala.
Yeah, I'm teasing you. I said
Hey,
alternative, so long as we're not
I
calling area
mean,
boys to
we
take care
have
of
to
the
all be
matter.
reasonable. So, we can get people to speak to people in a way that
Okay,
they understand, in a language that they understand.
that they
But
understand.
that's
Okay, so
that's
we,
that
so
only
let's
happens very rarely.
very rarely. Hopefully, it doesn't happen at all. Okay, so that takes us to the nice next level that I want to talk about that artist manager relationship. We've first talked about establishing the relationship and what goes into that, and some of the cultural nuances that affect the relationship. So the second part is what you've already flagged it, the contracts. And you said you talked about having airtight contracts. We're both lawyers here, understand a lot of the contracts and things that go into it. So for you, what are the key things that you believe artist managers and also the artist should be looking for purposes of what goes into that contract? Just a few things, not too much. Don't give everything out. They still need lawyers.
The key things. So for us, the key things that we look out for in a contract will be the terms. How involved are we? And we have a conversation before we present a contract. How involved do you want us to be in your career? So that we don't overstep our bounds and you don't think we're doing too much and we aren't doing, much less than we have promised. One, two, what's the duration? We normally have a probationary period, so we suss each other out. Are we comfortable with each other? And if we're not able to reach a agreement within that period, we just, extricate ourselves from that agreement. And then the terms, we would normally be engaged with the talent for a number of terms that would be renewed by both parties if they want to continue or if they don't want to continue. And then what's the territory? Are we just representing you within a particular territory? Is it worldwide? Is it just within the continent? Is it outside the continent? Because there are people that we represent, people in the West that we handle their affairs strictly in Africa or in West Africa or West Africa and Europe. So it's always good to be clear on that. And that way we can always go back. The contract is good for each party to go back and say, okay, well, this is what I expect from you. This is what you were supposed to do. You didn't do it, and you have a period within which to bring this forward, and we would sort things out or rectify things depending on who the defaulting party is. So those are some of the things that we look at and ensure that we're all on the same page with talent. Some talents will tell you, some people are triple threats. So I'm an actor, a dancer, a singer, a writer. I only want you to handle the music aspect. So when it comes to acting and all of those things, we're hands off. And then, or we don't get involved, that kind of thing. So it's always good to have your terms stated and clear. Try to make it as concise and clear to the talent as possible.
You've worked with a lot of the international brands as well. So when you're drafting that particular contract, or not drafting, negotiating it with your artists and figuring out whether it's just local representation or local and global, do you then liaison for your agency with global agencies, whether in the West or other markets, for purposes of being able to make sure they're serviced maybe by an artist manager internationally?
So we do have that understanding, especially because we have affiliates all over the
Mm-hmm.
world. So most of our contracts will tell you that our representation for those ones we work with locally, our representation territory is worldwide, and that is because you can leverage off our relationships and our affiliates who are positioned globally, whether it's Europe, whether it's in North or South of America and the likes. You have access to those relationships, and vice versa. So if we 2 years ago we kind of signed with an international act, and they said, okay, just for Africa, in terms of bookings, in terms of representation, this one management represents this particular talent. So we do have that, and it's it works both ways, with our affiliates, with our associates, and the likes. Same thing we
That's
do with
fantastic.
people in Africa as well. So
Mm-hmm.
it's all about, I think it's all about, your connects. It's all about who you do business with. It's all about relationships. I think representation is relationship. If I don't trust you, if I can't trust you, I can't trust you with my career. And that's something we really do respect on our own end. If a talent comes to you and says, I need for you to guide me or guide my career, it's something that we don't treat with levity.
Okay. The final question on that contract side of things is the sunset clause, or I don't know what you guys call it. There's a particular terminology you guys call it over there, which is basically after the relationship fades out, you're still getting some part of the royalties, but it's sort of like phased out completely. What's the language you guys call it over there? It's escaping me now, but we call it the sunset clause out here.
It's funny that you call it the sun. We don't call it the sunset clause over here, but we just
Mhm.
say, after our relationship has expired, we
Okay.
are entitled to residuals on deals that we have closed or initiated. I think for us as well, we always look at our own relationships with our clients as a partnership. So if we create ventures for you, we still have a bit of that. We still have a piece of that till in perpetuity or for as long as that entity or that venture exists. So it's sort of
Depending
like
on
a
who's
business
negotiating it.
partnership.
Yeah. Yeah. Depending on the negotiations,
Absolutely.
obviously, right? Okay. All
Absolutely.
right.
Yeah.
So the big, big, big arm now, let's go crisis management. And from that crisis management, I want to talk to you about managing the Mr. P brand. How or what are your concerns when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to handling um, crisis management from an artist manager standpoint?
Forgive me, I'm gonna switch devices again. I didn't hear what you said, Edward, but just give me 1 minute and I will come
Sure,
back to you on
sure,
that. Real.
sure. All right, folks. So if you're just joining us throughout the stream, if you've already been from the beginning, then you know that our guest today, Emem Ema, has been in transition. She was already pre-scheduled much earlier to be back in Lagos, where she's based, Lagos, Nigeria, but unfortunately has been stuck for a few hours, if not more, at the Abuja airport, the capital of Nigeria. And so her flights keep getting delayed. And so she didn't want to miss the interview. So nonetheless, she still appeared, and we've been working around that and getting some great, great, awesome content from her, and appreciate her commitment to ensuring that the interview still continued. Irrespective of that, one of the things I wanted to cover in light of the changed circumstance is the big, big story across the Afrobeat industry and, of course, across the African continent of the talent Davido celebrating 10 years of being in business. Of course, Emem gave us her perspective on that issue. And in addition, I have invited you all, anyone interested, especially those of you that have been coming each week for a while now, every Sunday, to join me in the stream. And the way you can do that is just leave a comment, let me know you want to be a part of it, and I will shoot you a link to the direct stream so you can come join me here, and it'll be good to have you on. In the meantime, what I'm doing as part of that, as we transition with Emem, is going through the African Music Law website and talking to you all about some of the cases for Davido on the legal standpoint. If you've been following the brand, you know I've been very direct with Davido building his brand, and I've covered different areas. I've covered all the legal shenanigans, the lawsuits, whether we're talking on the civil litigation part of things or criminal, even with some of the most crazy cases we've heard that came. And then, of course, I've also covered the business side, the branding, the licensing, the expansion of the brand. So we'll continue to do that as our guests, as we get through with our guests. And we're almost coming at the tail end too for our guests. And then I want to finish out that discussion with Davido. But our guest just made a transition and she is ready to jump back in. The question I posed to her was crisis management. And we are going to talk about that and talk about how she was able to help rebrand Mr. P, who was formerly with the band P Square. And P Square is a longtime legacy band, if you will. They did a lot of first on the continent. And then the band pretty much fell out. And it was a major story. So we're going to bring our guest on to when she received the call for representation. There you go. Emem. Thanks for joining us. And Emem, you and I actually come from the same region, even though I didn't grow up. Yeah, thank you again for joining us. You and I actually come from the same region, even though I didn't grow up in that particular region. I grew up in Lagos, but we're both from Akwa Ibom, right? Heritage-wise? You're from Akwa Ibom, correct?
Yes, we are.
Okay, yep, and what's your specific?
Yeah.
What's the specific region?
Is known for.
Known for what? Please.
I'm from Itinan.
Itinan. Okay, so my family.
Akwa Ibom is known for.
Oh, okay, she's muting to avoid all the noise, right? But that's fine, Emem. Keep it going. Feel free to unmute so we can have the conversation. But I'm curious to see what Akwa Ibom is known for. My mom has told me, and I found the consistency that Akwa Ibomites are actually pretty present in the media field. We do media pretty well, and I'm noticing that consistency as well. Like we are pretty good on the media end. Among the wonderful things of hospitality are just great forestry area and tourism. The list goes on and on and on. A beautiful culture, certainly, within Nigeria.
So Akwa Ibomites are known. Akwa Ibomites are known to be very hospitable, like you said. We have some of the best cuisine from this side of, the continent. Our ladies are very pretty, and they know one or two things.
Hello.
In certain areas, yes, very fashionable. And you are right. We have a lot of people from our end that are into media, entertainment, and the creative industries. Very, very, accommodating people as well.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and most importantly, they say they have integrity. People from
that's
our
really
end have
good.
integrity.
That's really good to know. That's good to know.
Really
that's good to know. And one thing about that you emphasize on the hospitality that as a whole the country is not really maximizing on. My mom always was big on health and nutrition, and since I've relocated back to the States where I was actually born, for those who are meeting me for the first time, I've understood the power of nutrition. And when I look in the country of Nigeria to the group that whose foods really reflect that nutrition, it's actually the Akwa Ibomites, right? Lots of heavy greens, which has all of the necessary things you need from your vitamin C's and zincs and all kinds of stuff, and the way they cook their foods. It's a very, very nutritious food as well. Not just that it's
very,
great
very
cooking,
creative,
but
very nutritious.
nutrition. Yeah, so that's really cool to know that, because a lot of the other foods that we see in a lot other areas are pretty acidic and very sometimes may not be. And then now that we're doing a lot of Western foods, we're sort of replacing it.
Heavy,
exactly. So that's good to know. Okay, so back to the conversation on crisis management. I want to start off with where you get that, because of, we might not have you too long, and we're sort of getting to the tail end of having you. When you get that phone call from a major artist who is part of a big band, a legacy band, as I already told my audience, right? P Square, and then you get the phone call from Mr. P saying, I want representation. What were your thoughts at that point, in light of the fact that you were aware of the crisis that was going on,
exactly,
local and global?
So I was afraid of that call, I'm not gonna lie. And when he made that call, I was like, ugh. boy. Um, Also because we've done business with the group in the past, and we're friends and all of that. So it was tough, but with all of the issues that were surrounding that particular decision, there were so many ways that we had to handle it. First and foremost, a lot of people said, okay, well, now you have a target on your back because you're part of the problem,
Mm,
because it looks like you're taking sides. And a lot of people in the industry were very,
interesting.
very hesitant. They didn't want to say anything. Everybody wants to be the one who's bringing, the guys together and all. But what a lot of people didn't see was there was a lot of hurt, there was a lot of pain in the background, and we had to manage all of that situation. First and foremost, for Peter, mentally, emotionally, and professionally. It would have gone to a point where he'd have decided, I don't want to do music anymore, but this is what I love doing. And also, he loves his family so much. So there was a lot of conflict that we had to deal with, and most importantly, dealing with distraught fans. It
Hmm.
kind of happened
True.
suddenly. So how do we position this? How do we put it in such a way that we can manage all of these emotions? And that was the first angle that we looked at it from. You know that you're going to take a lot of heat because it looks like you're the one who broke up this legacy group. So how do we manage that, and how do we manage your mind, and your career going, forward? Um, the one thing was, Peter understood all of this. He knew, what the backlash would be. He knew that he had to be patient. He knew he had to ease people into this new phase, or into this new transition of his, and he was willing to put in the work and the time to make it happen. The one thing that we're thankful for is that he's not afraid to heavy lift at all. So he was willing to be
Mm.
patient. He said, I know that this means that I'm going to start from the ground up, and I will do whatever I need to do to make it work. And that's what we did. We put a strategy together. We had to make sure that he stayed true to the essence of, he's a big act. You have all of Africa riding on your back, and even parts of Europe or even the UAE. So first of all, how do we ensure that the group, or rather the fans, are okay first, so what you had was him having to hurt, heal, and go on with doing what he liked, what he loves doing in public, in full public glare.
Yeah.
People called him all sorts of names, but it didn't take his eyes away from the prize, and ensuring that I'm going to put good music out there. So he was also discovering himself and his sound as an artist whilst going through all of this. And here we are, 4 years later, and he's found his sound, put out a great album. And
Yeah. I heard. I listened to the album.
people
Actually,
seem
pretty good.
to like the album. Yeah, so we
Yeah.
did a lot of, first we did a lot of testing. Is this the sound that they want? Because it didn't make sense to come out from such a group and then try to replicate the thing that they had been doing. If you know Peter very well, you know that he's very astute and he's very creative. So he said, I have a particular sound. I
And
need to find
talented.
this sound.
Yeah.
I'm not coming here to reinvent the wheel. Exactly. And he's a consummate performer. So he had to show what he stands for as an artist. And that's what we have spent, the last couple of years doing, molding, and creating, to ensure that yes, he shows his audience, his true fans. That was another thing that we had to do. Whittle out the noise, whittle out the chaff from the wheat. Who are your true fans? Who's your true audience? Because there are some people that are probably stuck in that era, and they would refuse to move with either, you know, of the brothers. But this is what we're trying to achieve. This is my sound, and grow your own organic fan base from the ground up. And that's where we're at.
So let's talk about just a little bit on the legalese side of things, just briefly, because that was,
Hmm.
I think, one of the things that was very distressing. I have covered them when they were in California, met them, did the whole backstage, whole story.
Yeah.
It was really good. And one of the
He
things I
sends
did
his
notice.
regards, by the way.
Oh, thank you so much. Hi, Peter. One of the one of the things I noticed one of the things I noticed was how creative, very creative and meticulous he was, actually. because the direct interview I had, everybody was present, but it was a lot of him talking, and then the actual band practice prior to. No, it was just not only the dancing, there was just such meticulous tuning in of all of the different factors of the production
He's
that he
very
was very
hands-on.
tuned
Peter is
into. Yeah.
very hands-on.
And it was so interesting to see
He's
that
very hands-on.
come
He's
out
very
in,
creative.
yeah, it was so interesting to see that come out on the album, because I can hear it in the production, like all of the work. And then I saw the whole audio visual presentation as well. And there's no question he's sort of been able to carve out his lane. I think initially we were sort of concerned because he was doing some of the sampling of the different songs of different classic artists out of the US. And initially it was like, okay, where are you going with the sound? What's going on? But I like what he said, that was deliberate about sort of forging his own sound and getting people removed from what they were used to. So on the legalese side, relating to that, obviously so much going on the P Square brand. And we heard all this legal shenanigans that did not take place, partly coming from Peter talking about publishing, talking about all of this other things. From your end, as an artist manager, one of your roles obviously is to diversify and ensure you have all kinds of streams of income coming in from that talent, which obviously spills over to you as an agency. What were some of the things you considered in positioning this new brand where those streams of income are coming in and there's a clear, delineated line that it has nothing to do with the previous brand that he just came from?
Yeah, so I mean, you hit the nail on the head with that catalog, which is a very rich catalog, and you have several interests on that catalog. We knew that just put that aside for now while we try to clean up all of the publishing and all the legal, situations with that. How do we now build yours? So if you notice with Peter, he was putting out content, he was putting out material, and let's start building your own catalog. Peter's very, like I said, not because he's my client or my friend, he's very business minded. He's an entrepreneur through and through. He said, yes, music is great, but he has other businesses which we had to put structure to as we came on board. So now you have his lottery platform, you have the sports betting thing going on, you have merchandising, you have the clothing line, and he's very much hands on with all of his businesses. He's very eager to learn. So we had to ensure that there's structure to all of those businesses, which came as an offshoot of what he's done in the music. And those are things that, would outlive and outlast whilst the music is going on, while the catalogs are being, fully explored and exploited. He still has businesses and he's still employing other people, and using his celebrity currency for all of these other things. And then, I mean, there's the issue of publishing, there's him content creation as well. I think people will begin to see different sides of Mr. P outside of the music and even involving the music too. So he's got a liquor brand called Afro that is distilled African spirits. From our own area, you have lot of palm trees and
Palm
palm
trees,
wine.
yeah.
Exactly. So he's got his liquor is an essence from the palm spirit, triple distilled for Africans by Africans. He's pushing that whole narrative, and then he's also taking up acting as well. So if you see some of his videos, he has choreographed fight sequences and all. It's pretty very eager to learn, very hands-on on his business. And for us, like I had mentioned earlier, it's a partnership with our talents. We always try to bring out whatever diversification elements that we can from one talent. One talent can have 10, 15 derivatives from one particular talent. You look at J-Lo, she's a singer, dancer, actor, businesswoman. So she's either doing perfume, she has her Vegas show, she had her Vegas show. There's so much to do with this particular talent. And now that he has his time, he can dictate and say, okay, I'm going to dedicate this amount of time to this particular bit of me or bit of my craft. I'm going to spend time learning, I'm going to train myself, and then this is what I'm going to do. So it's been a joy to just behold and be a part of that. And this might be hard to believe, but he's pretty easygoing and easy to work with.
That's good.
It's been a
That's
journey for
excellent.
for all of us. Yeah.
That is excellent. Well, when you talk about how he's diversified his portfolio with so many income streams, working obviously with your agency as well, one of the things I'm thinking about, and I think that's what makes Davido, when we first started out, a really wonderful artist to celebrate in that regards, is that they're very few and far between, even now, of artists that we can point to, whether legacy artists from the past to the ones to the present, who actually know to not only
Mm-hmm.
create that infrastructure,
Mm-hmm.
but expand using music as a product for more
Yeah.
product offerings, and then have streams of
Mm-hmm.
income coming in from all kinds of different avenues. So they're
Exactly.
not just stuck with one part. So he's literally one of the few
Yeah.
artists out of the continent that's doing that. I think when I think of Tanzania,
Yeah.
maybe diamond platinums that you can point to, but very, very, very,
Platinums.
very
Yeah.
few. Yeah, maybe a
Mm-hmm.
handful we can even count. Okay, so
True.
let's begin
Yeah.
to wrap. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
You were gonna say? Go ahead.
I'm, I know, I was agreeing with you, and I think that's something that a lot of people in the industry have to learn. You have to be able to see just beyond, oh, I'm an actor, or oh, I'm a musician, or oh, I'm a producer. You have to begin to see beyond. So what happens, in the twilight of your glitz and glam? What do you now do afterwards? Do I invest? When you hear things like, Beyonce is investing in Uber, or she's one of the early investors in Uber, or Kobe Bryant, has a stake in several startups. As creatives, we also have to think business wise. So if for 10, 15 years, P Square, Davido have been collecting the highest amount of, in terms of performance fees, you see people who now invest in real estate or in other businesses or in startup and tech, so that when you can no longer jump on stage or you can no longer sing as well as you used to, you still have revenue and income coming in aside the royalties and all that would serve you and your future generations to come.
Okay, so let's begin to wrap it up. And the way I want to wrap it up with my final question to you is distribution, right? So we've talked about all these different things, taking it from that initial artist value chain and doing so to look really at your agency and how you're working and how a lot of people can learn, especially emerging artist managers and even the current ones who are not doing it right and need to understand that this is a business and have a business and legal framework on how to approach this. So on the distribution end, there's so much happening specifically in the digital space. Can you address some of your concerns relating to the continent with respect to that, and then some of the triumphs you think that the continent is gaining with respect to distribution?
One of the things that we look out for in terms of distribution is, I mean, it's the same way we look out in any relationship. It's transparency and being able to, can you actually do what you're promising to do? So we've actually on our own end gone through a couple of distributors, and the solution, what we came out with was maybe certain people should just handle certain territories and certain elements of distribution. So in terms of physical, whether it's digital and where, so that one person isn't controlling everything. And because they don't have the capacity, it's best to just, streamline it and share it amongst people who actually can. So that way it doesn't, what distro A is doing doesn't affect what distro B is doing, doesn't affect what distro C is doing. Fundamentally for us is doing our homework and ensuring that we know who can handle what and where. So we've gone through a couple of distributors, and one of the things that we found out is that they don't even understand the artist. It's not just about, I'm handing over my catalog to you to distribute, it's also knowing where to distribute and to who. So we're happy with our present distributors because they understood the sound, they understood who our audience was, and ensured that the material got to them. It's still there, and they're pushing, they're promoting, and ensuring that it gets to the right places. But in the past, you just had maybe big name distributors, and you just put it there, and you find out that you're one amongst 1,000 people, and because they
Mm-hmm.
don't understand the material that they're pushing, they wouldn't push it. They won't give it optimum attention or the necessary push that it deserves. So I would say that for any newbie out there or any new talent manager out there, do your homework for you or for your talent. We don't use the same distributor for all of our music talents because some people are versatile or they're capable in the area of Afro pop or Afro beats. They probably don't have the capacity in terms of gospel or even
Mhm.
alternative music, even though they claim they have the connects and the platforms. So I would say don't put all your eggs in one basket, but as long as we all have an understanding of what our expectations are of each other, then you engage. And I hope that makes sense to someone, and I hope it helps.
Yeah, and also it appears that when you look at your past relationships that you say did not work out on the distribution, and it appears were you negotiating in some of the marketing and promotion, so it's just not sitting on their platform, for example, or you didn't do that and now you're doing part of that, or does it just come integrated with, hey, if we put it on your platform, I'm just using an example, Spotify, if you put if a digital distributor, for example, says, I'll get it on Spotify for you, are they then carrying some heavy lifting on their end in marketing and promoting so that people can go to Spotify, or how is that working for them?
So for us, you have to put skin in the game. So you want to tell me that you put it on Spotify? What are we getting? Are you putting it on the right playlist? Are we putting enough of the promotions and advertising dollars to make sure that people on Spotify see this music? Is Spotify putting in any push as well? So those are you rightly said it. What do you negotiate? It's bad enough that you're trying to get your distro to the table to even have a conversation with you. Once you're not accessible as a distributor or I can't get you on the phone, that's a problem because it means that I can't get your attention. So you might just put me in the list of whoever else. But everybody has to have some skin in the game. What's the value that we're all bringing? Don't let it just sit in one place. It has to travel. And if it's traveling, are you ensuring that it travels to the right places? So it's not just you have my catalog and then at the end of the day you're taking what 20-30% and tell me that you had pushed it when you really didn't. So for us, it's what we negotiate. It's what we put on our terms or in our contract that you have to put in some marketing dollars into it so that we can all smile at the end of the day. It's hard work. Everybody has to put in something so that we can all be happy.
And I'm glad that you underscored that percentage, because that's an important part. That I was going to say that if you're an artist and you are not really giving anything, don't expect them to be doing the marketing and the promotions and then still saying, hey, what happened? But if you're giving a good size percentage of the revenue that's coming in, then you expect them to do their work as well and to do the lifting for that third party distributor that you've contracted out with. Emem, I want to thank you so much for being on again.
Thanks, Miss You.
The realities of what happened with your flight and the further delays, but still nonetheless making the commitment. I'm glad we could make it happen. I appreciate you. Please, please, please stay in the green room. I
Thank
will
you for
join you.
having
Let
me.
me just wrap it up with a little bit of a quick discussion
Thanks.
on yeah. So just wait
I
in
need
the
to say
waiting room.
this. I,
Sure.
I need to say this real quick. Okay. I need to say this real quick.
Go for
I
it.
You are an inspiration. I admire, I admire the passion that you put in promoting, especially African music or Afrobeats out there. Thank you for staying true to the cause. Thanks for showing some of us, how to do it and do it right. There are a lot of people who are all about the talk, but they do not put their push behind it. They don't put the might or the energy, but you have remained consistent and you're one of my favorite people in the industry. Every time I speak with you, I leave with a higher sense of, motivation and inspiration. So thank you for all that you do. We don't talk
Thank
as
you
often
so
as we
much.
should, but every time it's a joy. Thank you.
Thank you. And likewise, I already said it before you came on and through all the marketing and promotions that you are definitely by far one of my favorite people in the business on the continent side, for sure. You are on top of your game. You're professional about it. I think people should learn from you. I know that time is an issue for you to set up, for example, an artist management platform that can just be a pipeline where people learn. But if I was going to have someone on my team to help people really understand the game, you definitely would be one of the people I'd be calling on. So keep up the good job, keep the standard up, because nothing less is acceptable, and keep making it happen the way you are. I'm super impressed with what you've done with the Mr. P brand, which is one of the reasons I really wanted you to come on, because I know how much of a fallout it was. I know how crazy everything was, and to see the turnaround 4 years later, the growth, the success, and continued growth says a lot about how you handle it on the back end. So I appreciate you. And they say real G's move in silence. Isn't that thing that there's a saying about that? And
I
you
heard that.
you definitely move in
Thank
silence.
you.
You're not loud about it, but you make things happen. You get things done. And so I really, really appreciate that. Please, again,
Thanks,
stay
Miss
in
you.
the waiting room, and I will be right there with you. Let me just wrap it up with my audience. Okay, folks, thank you so much for joining. I still want to just leave you with Davido at 10 years old. Very briefly, people ask me all the time, and I think Davido's team, they've had an opportunity to see me write a lot about Davido, and they might think I don't actually favor him because, I just keep it as factual and objective depending on the cases that we're talking about. But Davido is actually one of my favorite artists from the continent. I love his tenacity, his work, his consistency. I think he's been able to help expand the brand globally in terms of just branding the continent and then branding Nigeria as well. He's got a big heart no matter what. When I look at the trajectory, I have on my other platform, Lady Brill, I was going through old emails and saw a notice that Twitter sent me that Davido had started following me. This was like back in 2007 or 8. And at the time, he was just trying to make inroads, or a lot early, I think. And to see where he's at now is just really, really amazing. But one of the things, too, that I say overall with Davido is he's got a big heart. I'm not just talking about the giving that he does, right? The charity. I'm talking about the fact that from day one, he's always been about artist collaboration and never really looking at whether you're at the top level or low level. It doesn't matter. That's one thing I really like and observe about him. Another thing that I like and observe about him is when it comes to bloggers and everything else, Davido back then would give interviews to, it doesn't matter who. A new kid trying to make it as a blogger or vlogger, it didn't matter. I really appreciate that. There's such humility around him. Places I think he can improve as a brand as he continues to expand and finds his own voice is, number one, I've talked a lot about it, about the personal. I believe that all of us are extension, like our brands are extension of our personal values. So you've got to go into that personal side and do the inner work so that it expands and doesn't overall tarnish the brand or just cause more stress and headache. So for him, I still think he needs to work on that inner work. Obviously, he's still a lot younger. He's growing and improving, etc. And that is all the noisy stuff that comes with so many things around him. If he could just streamline it, starting with all the diverse relationship drama, there's some point where that needs to stop and growth needs to happen. So hopefully he can nip that in the bud. And in future, I think if he gets that part down, that would be more refined. Another area that I would love to see him continue to work on, and I think is growing. I remember seeing one of his last interviews with Ebuka, and that relates to all the unnecessary beefs. It's so interesting when you come from wealth, how people automatically think that maybe it's not been earned or that you're not qualified with your talent to still show up. People get really angry and upset at you. And I've had to shift my mind frame because once upon a time I was indoctrinated with that mind frame. The fact of the reality is, unless we can show that people's families were stealing or doing something crazy, if a family has worked hard to keep a legacy for their children, we don't hit the children because of that. And Davido, despite coming from the major wealth he comes from, works probably harder than most people in the industry. And that consistency that Emem was saying in the very beginning, he has been very, very, very consistent. And for that, hats off to you, Davido. Congratulations on 10 years in the business. I'm going to do my job. So if things hit the news that we need to talk about, we'll keep it objective. We'll keep talking about it and look at both sides. But thank you all for spending the time. I wish one of you or two could come on, but maybe next time we'll get you on to talk, our co-host with me. Have a good one. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. And for those listening, you get it, the podcast this coming week. Take care. Have a good one. Cheers. Bye-bye.